Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Founder and Friends. I am John Daniel Trask, or JD, the co-founder and CEO of Raygun. I'm going to be your host today, and I am joined by Birol from ilert. How are you going, Birol?
Thank you, JD. I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, excellent. So we've been having a little bit of a chat prior to sort of coming on here, and before we kind of crack into it, Birol and I are both nerds from way back who have found ourselves running a business in the area of helping people deliver better software experiences to their customers. And so we thought we'd have a great old chat today around a range of topics. Obviously, there's a specific lens on the alerting side, and I've got to say, sometimes I still get paged by on-call, and I still remember those times. So we'll have a good old chat. It's one of those necessary sort of challenges of the tech industry, and I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about the experiences people have had and the stories you can share, because so many incidents happen in the world and so many great stories from them after the fact. I'm sure we'll all learn a lot. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, JD. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, cool. So you started out in tech. You're obviously now running ilert. What was the actual driver behind creating the company? Like, what sort of hell of an incident occurred that made you think, gosh, I really need to solve this problem?
Yeah, the birth of ilert was actually like much simpler than that. So I was a student back then. It was like 2009. I was like working at this software company at the same time writing my master's thesis. And I was doing research about like this topic that was called the context-aware notification. And the entire point of that research was whenever you have a critical incident or critical event, you want to have the perfect person to notify who is like capable of like resolving that incident at that particular time, based on like context factors such as like what's the time of the incident, what skills are required to resolve the incident. So while I was doing that, I was actually like one observation that I made for the second time was it's actually pretty hard to get a monitoring tool like Nagios to send an SMS, right? Then this was for me okay. Forget about the intelligence part. Forget about like, developing an intelligent alerting solution. Let's try to make that part really easy. And one thing I always knew was I wanted to go into tech. I wanted to study computer science, and I wanted to found my own company. And this is how ilert basically came to be from that observation.
Right. Interesting. And I think that point about making it accessible is a really good one. One of the things I've seen, to be honest, more so early on at Raygun, was that the number of customers that we would get that really weren't doing anything yet, and that was when I sort of realized the maturity in the industry was actually quite low. I wasn't having to wrestle people off competitors. So we just needed people to start monitoring things properly. Was that a little bit your experience too?
Absolutely. So this was like I was like I said, I was doing this thesis in 2009, and in 2011 and 2010 I graduated, and in 2011 I like made the decision I want to start a company. And I thought this is a big problem, right? Like being able to like connect monitoring tools with people effectively without having to set up any like hardware, and then there were no like APIs for everything back then. I think Twilio was just getting started, and it wasn't available for years in Germany anyway. So yeah, I can fully confirm, and it was even probably in Europe and in Germany, the situation was because we were trying to like build a cloud business. People were not super open to the cloud as well. So we had this this mode of operation where companies wouldn't have this problem like on a regular basis because they don't change their software. They don't have that many incidents, and then they weren't used to the cloud yet. So yeah, I can completely confirm that.
It's funny, that point about people being afraid of the cloud, and there certainly is things that have changed. That seems like something we also used to hear a bit more about, like, oh, where's the data going? And these days it's the default sort of assumption in there. And so you put this together. Obviously, you made it more approachable than some of the open source tools that were out there, so that folks could get set up easily. How would somebody kind of get started within the stack? Like, how does it fit into the various things? Like, give me a walkthrough of obviously you would support a range of different setups, but what's a common case you sort of see for people getting set up?
First and foremost, just for us as a company to deliver our value proposition and to deliver on our promise, we have to like perfectly fit into whatever our customers are using. So in other words, you wouldn't you wouldn't use ilert or you wouldn't get the value of our software if you would use it in isolation. So that's one. It's for us. It's not just a feature. It's actually it's a core part of the product. To fit into whatever our customer is using and whatever software they're using, because what we're essentially doing is we're connecting like systems. These are usually observability tools, monitoring tools, like crash reporting tools, ticketing tools. So whenever there is a potential source of critical events, our promise to our customers is we're going to make it very easy for you to connect that piece of source. And while these sources, they have great interfaces to interact with machines, to observe software, they don't have great interfaces to actually talk to people, right? To let them know, okay, there is a problem, to know whom to notify, to know what to do when the person doesn't respond. This is where we come in and we act as the central dispatcher for critical events. That's our promise, and that's what we're trying to make it very easy for our customers. But to answer your question, like what's the situation that we like usually find in our with new customers is they're doing it manually. So they have some sort of dedicated on-call phone. Maybe they're using a spreadsheet for planning on call, and they somehow wired their monitoring tool with this on-call phone, or maybe it's a PBX phone line, and then you have the on-call person taking that phone whenever the person is on call. And we of course make it like very easy. We adapt to whatever you're like. You don't have to carry an extra device. We support wide variety of notification channels, and so it should be like very easy to get started, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, the old days of having to carry around the company's pager phone because you were on call, not very remote friendly, that approach either, for when people are all around the world and things like that. I think I still have an old iPhone 4 or 6 in my drawer at work that was our old one that got retired a million years ago. And you're right. One of the things we see at Raygun is it's those integrations and those connection points that really are really important to customers, because, no one's going to change all the other pieces of their system just to support your one piece. So the more bits you integrate with, the better. Okay, so one of the things and obviously we had a bit of a chat prior to this before the recording started, and I was telling you prior time a little bit about the way that we do on-call at Raygun. So just for audience's benefit, I've always had the view that basically, a professional software engineer owns their code. The idea that somebody else is just going to have to pick up the pieces if it all falls to bits in the middle of the night is kind of not on. I think that's kind of a poor way to operate. So we've always taken the view of like everybody goes through on call, and it also helps people be comfortable when there's incidents, because that's another thing I've noticed is, you come into the industry, something goes wrong and you kind of freak out at first, and then you realize, hang on, this stuff breaks all the time, and if I have a freak out all the time, I'll be a very unhappy person. And so we kind of got in this mode of saying, right, every single engineer at some point is going to be on the on-call roster. It creates positive feedback that nobody wants to be paged, so there's a sort of a impetus to drive quality and clear up bugs, and all of that sort of stuff works out really well. However, it'd be important to acknowledge Raygun is not a massive business of, like 500 engineers. So it's much easier to pass that sort of task around. Do you folks have a particular sweet spot for a customer or organization size, or is it works for everybody? We currently use PagerDuty, and to be honest, I don't think PagerDuty would scale much further than how we're using it today. It does the job, but it's not that sophisticated. So where would you play? If a listener was, say, working in a giant company or they're working in a startup, is ilert a viable product for them?
Let me start by saying we're doing it the same way. Like as a business, we're doing on-call the same way, like you're doing it. So because there is a built-in incentive, if you build the software and of course have to operate the software, have to fix the bugs that you introduced yourself, there is a built-in incentive, like just to improve the operational capabilities of your software and just making sure that your service is a nice citizen in an operational environment, right?
Yes.
For these sizes, I would say like ilert fits perfectly because it's because we make it very easy to get started. We integrate with your environment. And you don't have to change that much, except for like, okay, you create a profile, you enter all your like contact information and whatever notification channels and devices you're using. But we do also work with like very large corporations who want to scale on call. And as you mentioned, that approach, that you build it, you run it approach, hits its limits when you like really want to like scale on call across an organization. Now, imagine, for example, let's say you are an e-commerce shop, so you for sure have the business criticality of incidents impacting your incident and the urgency to act immediately. And when you are like developing the entire stack on your own, which is like pretty common, like for large retailers, they like, for example, Rewe is a very large grocery retailer. They have their own stack, own software stack. IKEA is also a large retailer. They have their own software stack, and they write software across the entire customer journey, the customer facing pieces, but also like backend pieces where the fulfillment centers are supported by software. So the impact of an incident will like is an order of magnitude higher than when you are, I don't know, in a brick and mortar store, and or a few orders of magnitude, I would say, when you are in a brick and mortar store and a cashier stops working or something like that.
Yeah.
And then if you have a situation like this, you have maybe like 20, 30 teams to operate this piece of software because there are so many services involved. And then if you think about it, like you have to at least have 20 to 30 people on call at like any time, right? And if you're doing it like seriously, maybe you also have a backup person. So you end up with 50 to 60 people or 40 to 60 people on call at any time. And this is, of course, harder to scale. And that's where we see the companies start to change the way how they organize on call. They introduce dedicated teams, dedicated SRE teams, and there are a few ways to organize these SRE teams where you still have or you have a centralized SRE team per product, and they are on call, right? And this this is something that we're observing among larger companies too. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember years ago I got the opportunity to tour around LinkedIn and seeing how the area SRE team was working, and they sort of highlighted that I think the LinkedIn homepage at the time was assembled by something like 48 different microservices. You know, like the icon that says how many unread messages was a whole service. They had a team that could make sure that if that thing wasn't working, you know,
Yeah.
but if it didn't work, it didn't stop all the other stuff working. It was really quite impressive to actually observe how sophisticated some of the organizations can get. And that was something that I thought was really cool the more I was learning about ilert and the capabilities, because you had some really smart things in there that I knew we couldn't do at the moment with the tooling that we've got. And I'd sort of described to you in our chat, I was like, you know, we have an incident, we set up a Slack channel, you know, we go and update the status page, you know, somebody runs through the process, and then you kind of very politely highlighted that there was a better way. and I thought, gosh, that sounds pretty solid. So I think it, you know, I don't want it to sound too salesy, but I thought it was a really good pitch when you explained how your software was different than just sending you a call or a text message to say, hey, get out of bed and fix this thing. I'd love you to tell a little bit about that, the war room experience.
Yeah, sure. So the software, basically, I was in the beginning, I was telling the story like how the first idea like came to be, right? And then like I basically moved on, worked in different roles. And in my last role, I was like operating a mission critical 24/7 platform team that was also like doing on call, doing all operating critical services. And then it hit me again at this point where I thought, okay, there are usually two approaches when you have a problem, or let's say if you look at the on-call responder, there are two approaches to build software, right? You can either or to solve a problem, you can either try to, I don't know, like go a best of breed approach and try to pick the best software that does one specific task, right? Like calendar booking. Okay, I'm going to take Calendly. And or you have maybe a platform approach where you offer a wider array of services, but the overall experience is a single product where you would like feel that it's not like pieces that were integrated, that were wired together, but it's a single product. And this is our approach for incident management and incident response. And when we say incident management, the area of incident management is broad, right? There are players like ServiceNow, and they solve different needs. When we look at incident management, we really look at real-time incident management, where whenever you have an incident, and like the tasks that you have to do in the first 24 hours during the incident response lifecycle, we try to cover everything, right? And this starts like from preparing for incidents, and preparing for incidents is really about when you have an incident, right? And there are a few answers or a few questions that you need to answer. Things like who is the right person? What do I do? How do I do it? What is when you have an alert? What's the right mitigation strategy to contain this incident? And preparation is about trying to answer all these questions in advance. And so we do offer a few things there, from setting up on-call teams, setting up escalation policies, defining alert actions that you can then execute whenever you have a certain type of alert. And this goes, of course, to the alerting part. The alerting part is like getting immediate human attention, and then we alert people like PagerDuty does. But there's also another piece, which is when you are a small business, probably the person that fixes the problem is also the same person that needs to talk to customers, talk to stakeholders, right, and update the status page. And we also support status page. So we more or less cover the entire incident response lifecycle and provide an end-to-end solution that starts from preparing for incidents and goes to as far as learning from incidents, writing postmortems. And if you have everything in one place, it's a better user experience. That's what our position is in that regard.
It certainly sounded like the sort of thing where we get everything out of the box, and if I was building out something new, it'd certainly be a first port of call. Now, you touched on earlier about talking about retail. So in Raygun's world, we have quite a few retail customers ourselves, and you mentioned, the e-commerce side of it is like this can be really devastating to a company when people can't buy. And I often think of it as like some of these e-commerce companies, it could be a multinational business. So while it's one website, it's not the same as having one retail store, as you say. It's actually the global store.
Yes.
And I recall, I'll give one little story before we sort of dig into it. But we had we worked many years ago with Nordstrom, and they had a really great big Black Friday sale, Cyber Monday, and this was unrelated to us, to be clear, the event. But they had a massive failure. Basically, nobody could buy anything. The store got the online store got overwhelmed. It fell over. There were all sorts of things. And from memory, what they did was they responded by providing, I think, everybody with like a $5 voucher as an apology or something like that they got emailed out. This was years ago, and they ended up, I believe the story went that they ended up generating more sales than they forecast, by showing that goodwill and having responded and doing the right thing. And that's something we talk about a little bit at Raygun as well, is like, hey, everybody has incidents. It's about how you put it right for people and how you take it seriously. We're obviously just at the time of recording, we're coming into Black Friday, Cyber Monday time. There are teams sort of getting jittery. I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts, maybe through that particular lens of e-commerce and retail, in terms of things you've seen with your customers, some tips and tricks perhaps, or even some nightmares.
Yeah, we also have a very large exposure in retail, and I want to believe this is because retail as an industry, they were among the first who invested heavily into digital transformation, into improving the customer experience through software, and of course, this was also an industry that was the most threatened by big tech, right? So you had Amazon taking over retail all over the world. So I want to believe that that's one reason why, at least for us, there were so many retail companies who transformed themselves, essentially became software companies, because they built up so much software know-how. They started to build their own solutions. And as far as incidents goes, yes, I agree. I think there will always be incidents, right? And you should be prepared for incidents to happen. And like nice tactic from Nordstrom. That's a really nice story. I think I don't have a story like that.
You can tell us the nightmare ones.
Our largest like retail customers are like IKEA is, for example, one of our largest retail customer, or Rewe is one of our largest retail customer. And for Rewe, like they have built so much tech into like whatever it takes to build this customer experience, because Rewe it's one of the largest grocery retailer in Europe, right?
Right.
And they like started building online business models 10 years ago, and they do it from like start to end. So they start with the customer experience, and there's a lot of technology that goes into, for example, building fulfillment centers that are capable of delivering food, because like, if you deal with foods, it's a much more complex scenario than if you have to like ship and store t-shirts or electronic articles, because like food, you have to store them in different temperature zones. And this complexity, you would see this in like in each part of the software. And they, for example, like whenever they have a glitch in one of their food fulfillment centers, every person in that food fulfillment center, they have a like kind of an emergency hotline, where whenever they call that hotline, 10 incident managers, like the phones of 10 incident managers, they ring all at the same time. So it's really that critical, because when the food fulfillment center doesn't operate, when there is a glitch, like this will cascade, and so many processes will be affected. Like you have the tour planning, you have like shipment, and then you have you promised a certain slots to your customers. So it's really like it's highly critical. And usually with online businesses, like the competition is just one click away, right? When your service is impacted because you're having an incident, that revenue is usually gone. And I think for if you have loyal customers, then you can make up for it with thing that you just that's the story that you just told, with vouchers, and just showing that, hey, we're humans, we can make mistakes, and we're trying to get better. And I think that's a nice approach, because the alternative, like if you want to completely avoid incidents, one strategy could be okay, I'm not touching my systems, right? I mean, there's a reason why there's a saying, never touch a running system. But the problem with this advice is, if you follow that advice for long enough, your customers won't touch your systems either at some point, right? Because you are not adapting to the customer needs, and that's why we think like make incidents a non-event, make changes a non-event, because changes introduced by humans through deployments, through software changes, are the number one root cause for incidents. And make these a non-event, and change as much as possible, or as fast as your situation and your customer like requires changes from you, and then just invest heavily in preparation and training, and make it a non-event, so you are like fully prepared, and it's not something where it scares you and drives. I think in the beginning you said, if you would be in this situation like constantly, you would be an unhappy person, right? Like if you're constantly under stress, and that would be my advice. Like make it a non-event, and do it more often if it hurts, right? So
that's exactly right. I mean, I know a lot of our listeners will be very familiar with that idea of whether you deploy on a Friday or not, and it always bugs me when people say don't deploy on Friday, because I always think it really is just a signal that you're afraid of your own systems. You're not confident with the systems, and let alone the fact you're giving away 20% of the working week. It's like that's a pretty big cost for just let's play it safe to throw away 20% efficiency. But at the same time, it is that need to build that confidence up within a team. And where we've got to these days is that unless it's a particularly crazy outage, to also try and take the approach of failing forward. Doesn't necessarily apply when it's 2:00 in the morning wake up, but like, if it happens and you're sort of working, it's like, well, rather than just roll something back or just try to quickly remediate it, why don't you just patch it and ship it? And that sort of drives a sort of operational efficiency, that build servers have to be quick, deployments have to be easy, everything has to be really reliable on that pathway. But that builds the confidence, right? That's what makes you sort of go, oh, I'm a bit shocked there's an incident, but I'm calm enough to know that once I figure it out, everything's kind of plain sailing to get it out there. And I think that also drives that confidence up overall in there. Coming back a little bit to retail, and this is just my opinion on it, but I've long held this view, and I might get told off for saying this on the podcast, but what I see is that retail and e-commerce seems to resonate a little bit more. People take it more seriously because money's involved. And if it's, say, an application being monitored, so whether it's a web app or a desktop app, that connection to when the user pays you is kind of out of sight from the incident, whether they've pre-purchased or they have a subscription. But as you say, in e-commerce, if I can't complete the checkout process, and particularly you mentioned food, let's say it was ordering a pizza or something like that, I'm unlikely to still be interested in ordering a pizza 4 hours later.
Yes.
It's all over. And I'll tell you, I'll share one story that really impressed me, because I really think software teams could always do with being more empathetic towards the customer and just thinking, what would the customer want? And we were working with one customer of ours where they were experimenting with the idea that if there was a software exception that occurred at the time that the user was explicitly trying to check out their order, and in their case, they had stores all over the world, that Raygun would capture the error, and then they could use smart alerting to route that order through our system to the store, so the store could ring the customer and say, hey, I see you just tried to do this and it didn't work. How about would you still like me to ship the order for you? And when I heard the story that they were playing around with this, like, that blew my mind. I thought, if I was a customer of that offering, and I was sitting there kind of, because, you sit there, especially when you're like, I'm even trying to give you money and it doesn't work, like nothing is more infuriating than that. And then imagine you got a phone call and said, hey, how about we do it anyway? You would become a fan for life, like.
Exactly. Yeah, instantly, right? Yeah, like it's a wow experience. Yeah.
100%. And I won't go into too many history stories, but my career started with 20 odd years back now, and we used to build development tools, and we put in place a nightly build system. So these were still installable on your computer. These weren't web apps, but you could go, and if you're a customer, you could log in and download the newest build off our build servers every single night. And it was the same dynamic. Person would post in our forum and say, hey, I found this bug or this issue. Now, this wasn't an outage. There was no pager duty necessary back in those days. And we would just respond by fixing it and saying, cool, it'll be up in 4 hours when the nightly build process runs again. And that was another case where if a person experienced that, we would have them as a customer for life. It didn't matter that there was a bug. It was that putting right and the responsiveness to it.
Yeah.
Out of your experience with some of these customers, is there a hero story or an example that you have that you might share with the listeners today, where something has gone phenomenally right? Like, what's a story that has the team at ilert kind of go, yes, like, we really made an impact there? Hopefully a positive one.
One area where we constantly not impressed, but we're like, something didn't go right, and then you actually talk to the customer and show that, okay, like, now there's a real person explaining you what went wrong, and like, be very transparent about it, and then how we're gonna make up for it, and be there when things are not working. So this is something where we constantly see that our customers are like, they value this really a lot, where they can reach out to us and actually talk to a human, and then and we help them solve their problems, because the product, like, using the product, integrating the product, sometimes involves like a little bit of technical knowledge, and our support is like capable of actually helping you and providing technical guidance as well. And this is an area where we see that our customers are valuing this, like fast response times in support. I don't have a particular story, at least not off the top of my mind right now.
That's
Something
all right.
went south first, and then like we turned the wheel.
Yeah. Well, I think that support one is a good one. The talking to real people.
Yeah.
We have a similar type of setup because I think as well with technical teams, and this is just a theory from me, but I kind of
Mhm.
have this view that a lot of the technical audience can actually be quite difficult to market and sell to, and the reason that they
Yes,
can be difficult to market
100%.
and yeah, well, I probably shouldn't swear on my own podcast, but they have really good bullshit detectors, right? Like they
Yeah.
detect when something is not right. And I actually think that's awesome. And I tend to find that the rest of society is usually about 10 years behind. So I say to some of the team, I'm like, we were running, ad blockers in 2004, but it wasn't until
Mhm.
Apple added one to Safari in like 2015 that suddenly everybody used them, right? Those sorts of behaviors. And so the tech industry was sort of ahead there.
Yeah.
And I think the tech industry does have this demand for like, I need to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about as quickly as possible to get to the bottom of this. And I think that builds that trust as well. That like, hey, I know I'm talking to somebody. Nothing's worse, right, than when you ring up, I don't know, the airline and they keep telling you on repeat how important it is that you're calling them while not
Yeah.
answering the phone.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it can't be that important. And
Exactly.
I've often, there's a saying that I'm sure you've heard in the industry, but you've got to keep the person who can fix the pain as close to the person who's feeling the pain, because that way they'll actually get resolved. If I ring up the airline and I have a software complaint, I know that ain't getting fixed. But if
Yeah.
I was talking to the developer on the team, it would probably get resolved. And so I think that's a really challenging balance. It's another one like you touched on earlier where scale becomes the problem, right? Like
Yes.
Microsoft can't just let you talk to every single engineer on the team or they'll never ever get anything shipped.
Mm.
So there is a balance in there, but I think earlier on that sort of ability to provide genuine support really really resonates with people in there. So I've talked a little bit about Raygun there, and one thing we do is we obviously track the software exceptions and we send them
Mhm.
out and whatnot. And we do have some simple alerting capabilities. We're obviously much more of a data provider and sort of a signal sender, if you will. You've built an integration with Raygun,
Yes.
and so this is a great way that we can send these signals from, say, Raygun crash reporting, and then actually supercharge that sort of addressing of that out to whoever should respond to it. Could you tell me a little bit about that integration, as well as you can talk about the other integrations too in the platform that you've built?
Mhm. Yeah, sure. As I mentioned in the beginning, like integrations is a core capability. Like being able to integrate ilert into your environment very easy. That's a like I wouldn't even call it a feature. It's really like a core principle how we run our business. And whenever our customer approaches us hey, and says, okay, we're using this product Raygun, and can you build an integration for us? And I think this is how the integration came to be. And our promise is yes, it takes us like we'll build a native integration in 2 to 4 weeks,
Yep.
and provided that it's a product that's like available, that's at least approachable, where you don't have to go through like layers of people just to try the software, right? So sometimes we do have that experience. Then it takes longer, but of course
Hmm.
with Raygun it was a very like smooth process. This is how we kicked off building the integration. I think, and I think the integration we've had it for quite some years. Now we've improved it recently, and that was also very smooth. And again, we are vendor neutral when like we don't have a strong opinion like how you should monitor your tools or how where like critical signals should come from, or at least we don't impose that opinion to our customers. That's why we're vendor neutral when it comes to like monitoring the observability and whatever like other critical sources of alert sources there might be. And where we act as the central dispatcher for critical events, right? And the way this works is like we know like we're the central place where you would have all the like people related data, like who is on call, what's their schedule, what's the best way to reach them, what do I do if I cannot reach a person, like who's their backup, and like we go very deep in that area, right? Like there are simple things like, for example, the number of notification channels we use, or when you receive a notification, are you able to acknowledge that notification on the same channel without having to log in somewhere? This is what we do. The entire scheduling experience, we make it very easy. Let's say you are on call and you have like an emergency and you want to ask someone else, can you take over my on call? Like that part we make it very easy. And for our customers, when they have another source, it's just like, okay, they plug it into ilert, like, because what you don't want to do is replicate all the people related information in every monitoring tool, right? So you don't want to manage like availability schedules multiple times across multiple tools. Like even if like Raygun had the best alerting and like on-call capabilities, I think it would still not serve the customer needs in total, because probably there is another tool that also has critical information that also and this potential source for alerts needs to get routed to the same people that operate the software. And these usually there's, even if there are multiple sources, the overlap of people that should receive these alerts is usually high. So that's why we think there should be a central dispatcher for alerts, and that's where we come into place.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with that model. And you touched on it earlier, of like best of breed products connected together, or, trying to be a generalist product for everybody. And I'm certainly probably a little bit more in the former category, where it's like, I want to have the best things in here. And as you say, like Raygun provides certain monitoring around exceptions, application and site performance and things like that. But it's not necessarily, say, tracking business metrics, where somebody might say, hang on a minute, we should be doing sales at this level, and it's just suddenly stopped. Somebody needs to go and look into that, even if there wasn't an actual code failure that's preventing it. So bringing all of that stuff into one platform makes a lot of sense. And on behalf of the customers that work with both of us, appreciate the integration as well, as I'm sure they do. We're getting near the end of our time here, Birol, and for those of you that have been are actually watching the video, you'll also have sort of noticed as the sun comes up behind Birol and goes down behind me. So you're in Germany, I'm here in New Zealand.
That was very fun to watch.
Yeah, it's been interesting. And so as we kind of run down, so what is your website address? Because some of the folks will be listening to this just simply on Spotify, so they might not have the video and they won't be seeing your logo in the background there. How can they find your service?
Yeah, the best way is just to visit our website. It's ilert.com. We have it's completely self-service free trial where you can try out the product with all the features for 14 days, and it includes everything, include a very very responsive support if you have any questions. So that's the best way to try out our product.
Yep, and so that applies for the Raygun customers too. If you're curious, check out ilert. And similarly, we have a free 14-day trial if you haven't used Raygun, and probably the same as you. We're really happy to help folks getting set up and get these things going and answer any questions. Have seen a lot of different incidents and problems and issues over the years. So often those sort of conversations, they start out as, is this going to be a sales call? And usually it turns into like, no, it's a bunch of people who have the same shared problems, almost riffing on the challenges there and how we can do them better. So yeah, hey, I really appreciate your time with us today, Birol. It's been really interesting actually learning a lot more about ilert and how it can help people. I know I've learned quite a bit myself. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, JD. Thank you.